Hello everybody, this is Leah and welcome to my YouTube channel, Nerd Girl Power. So guys, I have been dealing with horror lately. You know how they say that real life horror is worse than, any kind of storybook horror? Well, I've been having my own real life horror lately. You know, it's every time I turn around, it's there. I can't get away from it. I think I'm being haunted. In other words, it's tax season, so I'm dealing with the horror of income taxes and answering telephone calls for a certain large anonymous tax company that uses Kathy Bates in its commercials, sponsors the NFL, and free. So, in order to, to relax and take myself away from that horror, I decided, to watch some TV. And what could be more relaxing and a better escape than watching The X-Files, right? Yeah. I mean, I've been a fan of the show for 25 years now. I was a freshman in high school when it first aired. So it's been a while, and I started watching it even before really even people knew what it was and before it became mainstream like it is today. So I thought, what episode could be more comforting than one called Home? Yeah, okay, cue the sarcasm right about here. I hope that the video camera is picking up the sarcasm sound waves because, yeah, Home. The first episode, I think, to receive a TV mature rating, and it aired once, and I missed it on the first time that it aired because the networks refused to air it ever again due to the nature of the content of the show. I had to catch it another way. So that's what I'm here to talk about today, is this particular episode of The X-Files, Home. And a little side note here, I know that when people hear The X-Files, they think of aliens and people being kidnapped by aliens and aliens bleeding green blood, and you wouldn't be wrong on that. But for this channel, I'm going to focus on the Monster of the Week episodes as opposed to the Myth Arc episodes, which is what most fans know the aliens type episodes as, the Myth Arc. But I'm going to focus on the Monster of the Week episodes, and there's a couple of reasons for that. My primary one is that you can watch those in any order you want for the most part. If you haven't seen all of the episodes, you can just jump right into one of those Monster of the Week episodes and watch it, and you'll know what's going on. 2, those are actually my favorite episodes. I mean, there's nothing wrong with the Myth Arc. I like a good alien kidnapping as much as any other X-File with a PH. But there's just something about the Monster of the Week episodes. I know I'm a horror fan. I might be a little biased here, but I just love those, and those are some of the best ones, including this one titled Home. So, before we go on any further, there will be spoilers for the episode of Home from The X-Files. So if you have made your way onto this channel, please keep that in mind. Okay, now that we're done with that out of the way, before I forget, I actually have some X-Files merchandise. Here is my Scully pop figure and my main man Fox Mulder pop figure. And hopefully I can get some more merchandise for the X-Files. These are the only ones I have. But if I see one for the cigarette smoking man, or if anybody ever cares to donate, I certainly wouldn't turn it down. So let's go ahead and do a brief recap of the X-Files episode Home. Let me just read from the Wikipedia summary here. Mulder and Scully, they travel to a small, isolated town called Home, Pennsylvania, because the local sheriff, whose name happens to be Andy Taylor. We'll talk more about that in a minute here. Sheriff Taylor finds the body of a severely formed dead fetus. Excuse me. So he calls in the FBI. Of course, Mulder and Scully are brought in due to the seemingly paranormal or unusual nature of the case. Mulder and Scully investigate. They meet a family called the Peacocks, a family of farmers who are also deformed, and they are isolated. They live in their house and nobody messes with them. They don't mess with anybody, supposedly. Mulder suspects that the brothers kidnapped and raped a woman and forced her to have the baby, but Scully investigates, does her medical tests, and discovers that there's a history of incest and that the baby's father was one of the Peacock boys. And Mulder and Scully discover that there's a quadriplegic living under the bed in the Peacock household who happens to be the matriarch of the family, Mrs. Peacock, and she was the one who gave birth to the fetus. Mulder and Scully, in retaliation, the Peacock brothers kill the sheriff, Andy Taylor. Mulder and Scully try to bring them to justice, but the oldest Peacock brother and the mother, Mrs. Peacock, end up escaping, and they leave home to go start a new family elsewhere. So, I don't know if this is my favorite among the MythArc episodes of the X-Files, but it's sure ranks up there, or maybe down there, given the content of the show, the episode. Like I said, this was the first episode to receive a TV mature rating. Some of the critics didn't like it. They thought it was excessively violent. And yeah, they're right about the violence, because there's a lot of that in this episode. Which is, you know, I like blood as much as the next one. But I also, and I don't know if maybe I've got something wrong in the head. I probably do. I mean, I'm hosting a YouTube channel that deals mostly with horror and, you know, the gruesome and macabre. But I and my gallows humor actually found a lot of this episode pretty funny, and there were parts that made me laugh. I remember one part at the beginning. Mulder and Scully are investigating, and they're at a ball field, and the reason why they're at the ball field is that's where the kids were playing baseball and discovered the body of the fetus. So Mulder is just messing around with this baseball and talking to Scully about how he remembers summers in the vineyard and how this brings back nostalgia. And keep in mind, we're talking about an investigation, a dead fetus, and a severely deformed dead fetus at that. And Mulder's sitting there talking about baseball. And then Scully tells him that if he's without his 90s brick cell phone for more than 5 minutes, he'll go into catatonic schizophrenia, which, yeah, I mean, that's a new one. But just the banter between them, it made me laugh, me and my gallows humor. I mean, there's a reason why in my head I took Mulder to my high school prom. You know, I don't know if he knows it, but we went to prom together and we had a good time. He was a good date. He was a gentleman. So thank you, Mulder. But anyway, and the scene where they're towards the end, where Mulder and Scully are trying to get at the Peacock brothers and are having to fight through the pigs. And Scully is just pushing up on that pig and it's grunting. And it was just, that also made me laugh. And we had a sheriff named Andy Taylor, which I found that was fitting. I also know that there's a tendency among police officers, or at least like among state cops and FBI agents, to call cops from small towns Mayberries due to their inexperience in investigating gruesome crimes, like when you find a fetus in a baseball field where kids are playing baseball. So I found that, you know, kind of amusing. And of course his sheriff's name is, or his deputy's name is Barney, and the deputy just gives Mulder an evil look when Mulder asks him his name and tries to make the Andy Griffith reference. So yeah, there was laughter in this episode, which it needed, you know, due to the fact that it is gruesome and disgusting. And it starts out being gruesome and disgusting from the beginning, because you've got the dead fetus, okay, and then you have the little boys playing baseball, and the camera keeps zooming in to where we know that fetus is buried, and the kids are kicking the dirt and scuffing, and the camera just can't not focus on that, and we know what's underneath there. The kids don't, until they see that bloody dead fetus. So that was gruesome there. And of course we get footage of the dead fetus, which I know this was the 90s, but even by today's standards, that's still gruesome. But although back in the 90s, that was just unheard of on television. Because this was way before the days of The Walking Dead, where people got decapitated and, you know, we just kind of brush it off as part of the show, or what we see on shows like Preacher, which I don't know if I even want to talk about here in polite company. So, I mean, even by today's standards, Home still holds up as just being pretty gruesome and disgusting and incredibly violent. And the writers and the producers do a good job of setting the mood. Because for me, the scariest part of this episode isn't necessarily the dead fetus, although that's gruesome, or even the Peacock house, which I'll talk more about in a minute. But it's the scene where the Peacock brothers are listening to that old-timey song in their car. You know, it's all about love and, you know, nice things. They drive and they stop off at Sheriff Taylor's house, and Sheriff Taylor has been sitting out on the front porch and ruminating about how he doesn't want things to change in Home, and he likes things the way they are, and he just wants to preserve the way of life there. And about 2 minutes later, he's killed off by the Peacock brothers. But what impressed me on this was the build-up. Sometimes it's more about what you don't see. And this particular set of scenes is about what you don't see. The sheriff and his wife go to bed. The sheriff senses something's not right. Ironically, he has his wife hide under the bed. And he makes his way downstairs with a baseball bat, and you know that the Peacock brothers are nearby, but we can't see anything at that point. We see what the sheriff sees, which is a dark house. There's shadows jumping everywhere. It's creepy. And then, kabam! Out come the Peacock brothers, and the sheriff is dispatched in a gruesome manner, as is his wife. That is just one of the best, not just in the X-Files, but one of the best kill scenes I've ever seen on anything in any horror movie. I mean, even ones like Halloween and Friday the 13th. But this scene is one of my favorites, and it's one of the best. And I will stand by that until, you know, whenever. I love it. There's also the Peacock house. And even when they're not there, when Mulder and Scully walk into that house to look around, you know that something's not right. You can see that it's booby-trapped. And it being booby-trapped results in an unfortunate end for poor Sheriff Deputy Barney, because he ends up decapitated by one of their traps. And you can just tell that something's not right. There's blood. There's no electricity because they're not in the modern world. It's mentioned that that house has been around since the Civil War, or as Mrs. Peacock so eloquently puts it, the War of Northern Aggression. And you know that it's just, if there was ever a haunted house in town, that's probably it. And it's implied at the beginning when the kids are playing baseball, they find out that their ball ends up in the Peacock's household, and oh, all of a sudden we found a new ball. We're not even going to think about going over there because that's a Peacock house. That's haunted. And we're not going to go and try to pickle the beast over there. You know, another little 90s reference for you guys. We're just going to stay the hell away from that, and rightfully so. And then we have the Peacocks themselves. You know, let's have a nice little family portrait here for a minute. Yeah, that's a family portrait to be proud of, isn't it? They're gruesome, they're deformed, and you know they're not right. Somehow they know how to drive. When I was watching this, I found that kind of amusing. I guess maybe Michael Myers taught them how to drive. I don't know. But, and then you have Mrs. Peacock. And she's been living under the bed for God knows how long. I mean, just the fact that you're quadriplegic and living under the bed, that is just gruesome and disgusting. And I'm not even talking about the part where you're letting your sons have their way with you so that you can continue your family line in the best way that you know how. I mean, this makes it even more disgusting. And then when Scully ends up talking to Mrs. Peacock, and Mrs. Peacock says that, oh, you must not have children. Let's find the exact quote here. I can tell that you don't have children. Maybe one day you'll learn the pride, the love, when you know your boy will do anything for his mother. And we are talking about anything, apparently, including, like I said, continuing on that family line. Which, the incest, I've got to talk about that for a minute, because incest, it's taboo. It's taboo for a reason. Because apparently Mrs. Peacock and her sons carry on a gene where the recipients are unable to feel pain. She mentions to Scully that if they had to constantly look after their boys when they were kids because they were unable to feel pain, so they never knew when they hurt themselves. And this is a very rare condition. I remember it being talked about in one of my psychology classes way back in the day. And I just thought, that's just interesting. And my psych prof told us it was very rare. I think he'd only seen a couple of people that have it. And it's not usually multiple people in one family. But when you practice inbreeding, stuff like that gets passed along because she has it, and then all of her children have it, and presumably the dead fetus would probably also be suffering from that syndrome. And that's just stuff that you don't want to pass along, so that's why incest is taboo among us as a species, so that we go outside our family and we produce healthy offspring. And it's just, you know, you talk about incest and you get people either giggling or just making faces of disgust or both. And there's a reason shows like Game of Thrones exploit that, because it's gruesome and, you know, it's kind of disgusting and it's taboo. And not normally, I mean, not even most network TV today would talk about something taboo like incest, and it's certainly not back in the 90s. That was a forbidden topic. And I think that's just one of the reasons why it was so hard to find this episode of The X-Files for a little while there, even though now we can watch it via streaming and see it anytime we want. But just the incest part, it did not make it friendly to networks. So, but I've got to sign off for today, guys. Okay. That's a nice summary of Home and why I love it. I could probably talk about it for a little while, more at least. That and, you know, however many other episodes of The X-Files. I hope to be doing at least a few more episodes on this channel to talk about The X-Files, because it's one of my favorite TV shows and there's just a lot to talk about. But I have to sign off for today. So I will talk to you guys next week. And as always, may your days be long upon the earth.